Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the online presentation of my master thesis, the last step of the Master of Science in European Forestry. And after spending almost 1 year here in Nancy, France, so welcome to my presentation, which title is Evaluating the Potential of Airborne Laser Scanning Sensors for Developing Indicators Applied in Sustainability Impact Assessments with TOSIA. So this presentation will be divided into 5 parts. The first one will shortly present to you the two main tools that I used in this study, Airborne Laser Scanning Sensors and TOSIA. The second one will state the main objective. Then I will move into the materials and methods by later presenting the main results and a little bit of the discussion. And I will conclude this presentation with some final remarks. So let's get started with the first point and with a short presentation of airborne laser scanning sensors. So this kind of sensors consist of on the emission of a precisely timed pulse of light that belongs to the near infrared spectral region. And the reason is that vegetation presents its highest spectral response within this region. The second fact is that by utilizing this kind of sensors, we can obtain a three-dimensional data. So we can obtain information about the vertical component also. And as you can see here on the right-hand side, we not only obtain information about the tree canopy, but also about the understory and the ground surfaces. Then the last fact is that represents a really big advantage when we want to measure different forest parameters. And here I stated just only five of them, but there's a long list. So once these airborne laser scanning sensors have been presented, now I will move into the TOSIA tool. And what TOSIA does, it's basically evaluating sustainability impacts. And for that, it's using value-adding production processes, or so-called forest wood chains. These chains consist in different processes that present both inputs and outputs, and they are also connected through different material flows. So TOSIA is using these indicator values and these material flows to evaluate sustainability impacts. And for that is comparing a baseline scenario, business as usual, with one or more than one possible future scenarios that can be the result of the implementation, for example, of new forest policies, or, for example, the consideration of climate change effects in the future. So once these two tools have been presented, let's move now into the main objective. And for that, the first question we wanted to answer was how can these sensors can actually be implemented within the evaluation of sustainability impacts. And for that, we need to start from the concept of sustainability and its three different main components: the economic, the social, and the environmental. And nowadays, it has already been quite well demonstrated that airborne laser scanning sensors have a strong capability to extract forest inventory data and different types of stand attributes. So that's a really powerful tool in order to calculate a wide range of environmental indicators that can be used as input for this kind of evaluating tools, such as TOSIA in this case. So moving now into the materials and methods. For this study, I used two main types of input data. The first one came directly from the three-dimensional laser point cloud that covered all this area that you can see here inside the yellow rectangle. And then the second type of input data corresponded to all those forest measurements carried out during the field inventory, and in a total number of 79 field plots. So now I would like to present to you the main methodology that I followed in this study, and I will divide this methodology into three different steps. The first one corresponding to all the processing steps of the laser data, And here in blue, you can see the two types of input data that I used, and the two main outputs of this step were different laser-derived metrics computed at two different scales, at the plot level and for the whole study area. So moving now into the second step, that corresponded to the regression analysis and the creation of linear models. And as you can see here, colored in orange, for the creation of these models, I used two types of input data. All those measurements collected directly in the field, and all those metrics derived at the plot level. So once these models were created, were fitted, they were implemented into the whole study area in the third step. And for that, I used all those metrics computed for the whole study area. So here in dark green, you can see that the final output was the spatial representation of all my predicted variables. And once all the maps were created, the different predicted values were clusterized into homogeneous management units that were used as input data for TOSIA. So here, starting with the results and the discussion, I'm presenting to you the 6 different regression models that I created. And just to define one of them, because probably you are not familiar with it, it's the Gini coefficient. That it's a coefficient that ranges between 0 and 1. 0 corresponding to even-sized forest stands, and then 1 corresponding to an even-sized forest stand. So forest stands much more irregular in terms of forest structure. So as I said before, once these models were implemented into the whole study area, I created the spatial representation of my predicted variables, and for that I used RMAP. So I would like to show you all the maps that I created. So for example, the total volume of logs, total volume of pulp, the Gini coefficient, and then finally the probability of existence of coarse woody debris. So moving into the next step within the results, I would like to present now the forest wood chain that I specifically created for this study. And I will try to go step by step, trying to explain all the differentiation processes that I made and why I made it. I made them, and which kind of criteria did I use. So the first differentiation was made between forest and other wooded land area from all the rest of land uses. And for that, TOSIA works with a definition made by FAO. And here, colored in green and in red, you can see all the criteria that are included within this definition. So all the criteria colored in green could directly be implemented just by only using the laser data. And then the output was a first delineation for the forest and other woodland area, but the problem was the criteria colored in red here. For all those areas with trees able to reach these thresholds in situ, for example, think about clear-cutted areas. In terms of airborne laser scanning, they look really similar to, for example, grasslands. So I had to use some additional geographical information in order to complement my first delineation. And for this particular study, I decided to use a coordinate land cover classification map made in 2006. So moving now farther down into the within the forest wood chain, the next differentiation was made between the left-hand side of the forest wood chain and the right-hand side. So for the left-hand side corresponded to all those forest areas with an exploitation interest, and in order to delineate them, I based my decision into 2 different criteria. The first one was the commercial volume, which corresponded to the sum of the total volume of logs and total volume of pulp. And the second criteria used was the variation in tree size, the Gini coefficient. And then this side of the forest wood chain was further developed down by differentiating all those areas with a potential production of sawlogs from all those areas with a potential production of timber for pulpwood. So as you can see here, the output of the clustering process were 8 different classes. So in order to develop the left-hand side of the forest wood chain, the economically interesting forest areas, I selected only those categories economically interesting with a low Gini coefficient and at the same time a low volume, a high volume yield, sorry. So I integrated them into the harvesting category, and then I further differentiated them between sawlogs and pulpwood production. So once the left-hand side has been explained, let's move now into the right-hand side. And for the delineation of all these areas, the right-hand side of the forest wood chain included all those forest areas with a potential for the conservation or for the recreational use. And in order to delineate them, the first criteria that I used was the Gini coefficient. And then later on, I also based my decision on the criteria of the probability of existence of deadwood material. So in this case, I selected only those categories that presented a high Gini coefficient corresponding to all those forest stands considered some kind of irregular in terms of tree size. So I joined them into a single category, and then I further differentiated them. So just to conclude this presentation now, I would like to present to you some 3 final remarks. The first one is that airborne laser scanning forest inventory applications present a really strong potential for the estimation of a wide range of environmental sustainability indicators. In this study, I calculated just only 6, but I can tell you that the initial list was really long. But for that, the second remark is that we need to be aware of the limitations of these sensors. For example, here in this study, I presented to you one possible limitation, that's the delineation of clear-cut areas. But unfortunately, there are much more. For example, still nowadays, species differentiation is not as accurate as we would like. Then the acquisition costs of laser data are becoming less and less expensive, but still nowadays, that's a really strong limiting factor. And then again, the accuracy of our estimations, it's quite limited when we work in dense canopy conditions. So as I presented also here with the addition of extra geographical information or extra remote sensing information, it's possible to overcome some of these limitations. I explained here the delineation of clear-cut areas and how the first delineation could be complemented with the addition of an extra source of geographical information. So that's been my thesis. Here you have some references that I used in this presentation. So thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. That's my final message. Thinking LiDAR, because as I said, they have a really strong potential. And if you have any questions or any comments, please post them in the forum or write an email to me. I would be really happy to answer them and to share the experience. So thank you very much. Bye bye.